So, just to make sure, this is the panel discussion on financing the accessory dwelling unit, and we should have added, and why that is so very, very hard. But hopefully we'll give you some ideas at least. Okay. The housekeeping note the organizers asked me to forward to you. If you are interested in GBCI or AIA credit, please sign the sheet. I believe that's up here. And write legibly, they say. Okay. My name is Martin John Brown. I am a freelance researcher, and one of the subjects I work on is environment and housing. And I'm the co-author of a journal article that's coming out in an appraisal journal in a month or so about understanding and appraising properties with accessory dwelling units. Taylor Watkins here was my co-author on that study. And besides trying to give sort of an authoritative summary of what ADUs really are and issues around them, we created a valuation method for properties with ADUs based on income. So hopefully that'll be some interesting reading. If you want to know more about me personally, you can go to my website, martinjohnbrown.net. What we're going to talk about today is, first I'm going to give you a background on some basic things that you might not know about ADUs that probably will have some impact on your ability to finance or refinance properties with them. Then Cole Peterson is going to talk about sort of more concrete things about ADU projects from a sort of grassroots homeowner enthusiast perspective. Cole is a really good, passionate sort of advocate for ADUs. He extensively documented the construction of his own ADU and very, to his credit, put all the prices on there, provided a lot of details that you don't normally see in sort of design publications. So I'm glad to have him here. Then Dakota Gale from Green Mortgage Northwest will talk about how to finance new ADU projects or refinance properties that have ADUs from his perspective as a person in the lending industry. And I think hopefully he will give us some clues about what to do, even though this is a difficult thing to accomplish. And finally, because appraisals are going to be a central part of any attempt at financing, Taylor Watkins of Watkins and Associates will give us his perspective on how appraisals work and how the people involved in the process can try to make the results more accurate. So ADUs are a really simple, intuitive idea, I think. We see this picture where there's clearly some sort of a dwelling up in this attic and egress has been provided. You can automatically, you can almost tell that there's a student or someone living up there. They're probably paying rent to the owners of the main house. They're contributing somehow to this sort of mini community. I like this picture because it sort of represents, the mountainous challenge of actually getting Or to give another example, you can also see that the natural appeal of an ADU in this picture of a backyard cottage. Here's the main house. Backyard cottage is recessed, and if there wasn't like a party going on, you could see a grandparent or someone living there, or maybe a caretaker for an older person who lives in the main house. So it's a really natural idea. But paradoxically, these projects are really hard to finance, even though you can see from the pictures they probably produce some sort of rent which should support a case for financing. So the panelists here are going to give you some of the more involved bureaucratic reasons why financing is difficult. But before they do that, I need to give you some really basic information that's behind everything. And that is, people are confused. They're confused about what ADUs are and what they can do. And I'm not just talking about homeowners. There are a lot of professionals from all over the lending and building industries who aren't exactly sure what ADUs are and how they can function legally. So please track with me as I go through some of this stuff to make sure that we're all on the same page. So an accessory dwelling unit is a small self-contained dwelling that shares the site of a larger single unit home. So it's the relationship of the two dwellings, not the architectural form. It could be either attached, like the attic apartment, or detached, like the backyard cottage. There are a lot of synonyms for accessory dwelling unit. And I'm going to name them all, even though it's tiresome, because all of these words and phrases have been used as exact synonyms for accessory dwelling unit. Accessory apartment, accessory unit, ancillary unit, backyard cottage, carriage house, casita, garden suite, granny cottage, granny flat, granny unit, in-law, in-law unit, mother-in-law flat, laneway house, secondary unit, SDU, and sidekick. And they usually mean the same thing functionally, except when they don't. There are people in the industry who make distinctions between these different synonyms, and there are other people who don't really make any distinctions. But some of the government-sponsored entities who purchase or guarantee mortgages do make distinctions based on these terms. So especially between secondary unit and accessory dwelling unit. That detail will be in our paper. Whatever you call them, ADUs are often in single-family residential neighborhoods, and they're often legally rentable. They're never in this view separate properties. That is, they have the same owner as the primary dwelling. Unfortunately, on an institutional basis, that creates a contradiction. To us, intuitively, when we see the backyard cottage, we say, oh, that's where somebody's grandma lives. We get it. It doesn't seem out of place in a single-family neighborhood. But on an institutional basis, a house with an ADU looks like an income-producing two-unit property in a single-family residential neighborhood. And, you know, as I think these guys will talk about, there's not really a category for that. Moreover, there are a lot of illegal ADUs out there, and they really muddy the picture. There's some great sort of documentary expose shots of life in illegal ADUs. I like this kitchen with the air conditioner and the hot plate on top of the microwave. And I like the more sort of romantic bohemian appeal of this place. They easily could be places where your children are living. Illegal. There are tens of thousands, possibly even hundreds of thousands of illegal ADUs in the country. They're really common in crowded urban areas like San Francisco or Boston. And there is a fair number around Portland, maybe 2 or 3 times the number of legal ones. They tend to dominate perceptions of ADUs. So a real estate agent, for example, might see an ADU in a house and assume it's illegal, downplay it in the listing, and then somehow make the owner believe that it's illegal, even when it's permitted. Government-sponsored enterprises like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are more accustomed to illegal ADUs than legal ones. So they have a lot of guidelines written for how to deal with the illegal ones, but very little for how to deal with illegal ones. And I hypothesize that that sort of taints legitimate ADUs and ends up encouraging people to give them little value, even when they're generating lots of income. So we can only talk about legal ADUs. I think that's what we're going to do, because they're more comparable to each other. If you have a legal ADU, you can often rent it out. This is a key part of their functional worth. In many cities, the owner has to occupy one unit, but they can rent out the other unit. In Portland, both units can be rented out. Hopefully, that income could influence the case for financing, but I'm not sure that's really the case, and maybe our speakers will illuminate that a little. So now you know the basics. But the question you need to ask when you're dealing with a property that has an ADU or could have an ADU is, do all your colleagues know the same things? For ADUs to be properly valued and then properly financed, everyone in the transaction has to be aware of their legal uses. You shouldn't assume that even the homeowner knows what's going on. You can refer people to the article we have coming out in the Appraisal Journal for sort of a authoritative, hopefully, introduction to the subject. And if we get everybody on the same sort of basis of knowledge, I'm hoping that in the future we can have less people living in conditions like this and more people living in places like this. That is a cottage by Walt Quaid in Portland. So now Cole Peterson will give us the advocate's perspective. Does anybody want to ask a question?